And welcome to True Talk. This is Samar Jarrah, and I am finally in the studio after suffering from an injury that maybe I'll tell you about it. As a service for everyone, my co-host Ahmed and I will be discussing the latest that has been going on in the world, especially in Gaza. We are hoping to get a physician to talk to us. You know how difficult sometimes connections are, but we're going to try to talk to him and then talk about Iran and the latest. Listen to this music. It's Palestinian traditional mix of music.
Un jour à la fois, ça me suffirait, tu me suffiras. Ce soir je te dis de cœur à cœur, je vois dans tes larmes des couleurs.
Welcome to True Talk. How are you, my co-host Ahmed?
I'm good, Samar. How are you? I'm glad that you're back in the studio. Hope you're recovering well from your injury. I'm not sure if you want to share with anyone or not. But
I want to. Please. I went through the station to tell everybody, do not try to remove the bone of the avocado while the avocado is in the palm of your hand, because the injury is, oh my God, Ahmed, I cut almost
I think it's
severed.
called a pit, not the bone.
Oh, the pit? The pit looked like half a kilo.
Yeah, the seed that's inside the avocado. Normally people, they slice the avocado like from the center, then they use the knife that they slice the avocado like in the middle to remove the pit.
Yeah.
And I didn't know about this until you mentioned it to me. When I looked it up online, there's actually a huge thing that many people injure their hands this way, and they call it avocado hand.
Yeah, I had no idea that it's a famous injury. It and the bagel injury, obviously. People cut the bagel, same thing, but I almost severed my finger, and the painful part is the nerve. The nerve is like electric. You feel as if.
How long have you been doing this with the avocado?
2 weeks earlier of that injury.
Saying, how long have you been doing it?
I'm just gonna tell you. 2 weeks earlier, I did the same thing and cut, but the flesh And I swore I'll never do this again. But I've done it like maybe this way, maybe 6-7 times but I did it 2 weeks earlier, and I swore, Ahmed, I'll never do it again.
I mean, my question is, have you been doing this for years?
No.
This way?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, only...
Well, I wasn't sure. Maybe it's like muscle memory and you just get in the habit and keep doing it and you forget.
No. I swore 2 weeks earlier I'll never do it again. And I did it, but with a steak knife. Ooh. Anyways, please don't do that. It's really very, very serious and extremely costly.
Whenever I do it, I actually set the avocado down like on a cutting board, and then I'll do it there. But I also saw this other method. I know it seems kind of weird, but because it caused such an injury, I saw another method where they actually, after slicing the avocado, they'll turn it like kind of upside down, where the pit or the seed is facing down, and you just apply pressure. You hold the size of the avocado and use your thumbs, both thumbs, and apply light pressure from the top, and it falls out.
I never knew that. But of course, I have the green thing that they sell at the supermarket to kind of press it on the bone or the pit and turn it. But I'm lazy. So just be careful, really, because I couldn't move my left arm for like 4 weeks.
How is it now?
It's much better, but I think I lost the sensation in one of my fingers. And the 50-50 chance that I will regain some of the sensation, like feeling it. So the doctor told me don't ever try to touch a hot plate or something to figure out the temperature. But there is, of course, pain. But you know, Ahmed, when it happened and I was alone at home and I saw my blood like all over the counter and the salad and the avocado, all I could think of is Gaza. How do people in Gaza tolerate injuries, like devastating injuries, like a blast or a concrete something falls on them? And you know, it's at the end of the day, it's just a knife injury. But people in wars in general, without anesthesia, without proper care, I mean, you should see when I went to the surgery center to do the surgery, how many stages I went through, how many physicians, the anesthesia doctor, the doctor who did the surgery, and 4, 5, 6, 7 different nurses. And over a little simple procedure, we are so lucky. We are so lucky, Ahmed, but people in other countries are, especially in war zones and especially in Gaza. That was the whole time, the whole past 4 weeks. Whenever I am in pain, I just remember them and say, how can they endure all this, Ahmed? Like I know a doctor in North Gaza, and he used to tell me, I just had to do a surgery without anesthesia. I mean...
And it's impossible to even imagine, because we have a small, whether it's smaller or mild or medium injury, and it causes so much discomfort, so much pain, but they don't even have the option for it, and it's still going on. I mean, it's not in the headlines now because of the war and the stalemate with Iran, but Israel's continuing. It's not as intense as before, obviously, but people in Gaza are still suffering, and nothing has been rebuilt. Nothing's getting in, or very little, and there's no accountability. And the destruction has now also, continued in southern Lebanon. Southern Lebanon looks pretty much like a lot of places look exactly like Gaza.
What's interesting, Ahmed, and really disturbing, is that they're using the same strategy that they used in Gaza, wiping out universities, schools, and neighborhoods. I'm not sure if you have seen these images of, when there is a blast that covers 5, 6, 7, 8 houses and buildings next to each other in southern Lebanon.
Yes, I mean, yeah, entire neighborhoods, residential and infrastructure, and everything. It's just basically they're clearing everything out, flattening everything.
And people think, I'm not sure why our media, they don't cover Ahmed. Why they stopped covering the Middle East or Gaza or Lebanon. They move on and on and on.
It's so obvious that, the image and the reputation of Israel is so bad now, so toxic, even among, conservative Christians. It's unjustifiable. People have had enough. And the media is obviously, which is becoming more and more consolidated, they're trying to censor those things because they realize that their images, it's actually not the full story. It's, just a small percentage of what Israel is actually committing and doing, the atrocities. And that has already had a huge impact on public opinion, where so many people, the majority of Americans, are completely against Israel and what they're doing there, not because they're Jewish, because of the violence that they're carrying out against Palestinians, against other human beings. In America, where for the longest, forever, for decades, that the Israelis are seen as the victims, the Palestinians, the Arabs, the Muslims are the savages, and that are oppressing the Israelis. That has shifted. That has now turned around, where more Americans, majority of Americans, sympathize with the Palestinians and are against what Israel's doing. Pro-Israel groups want to say that that's all because of anti-Semitism. No, it's not. It's because of the violence and atrocities, the war crimes, the genocide, the ethnic cleansing that Israel is carrying out by its military. And, some people ask, well, why are they flattening southern Lebanon? Why did they flatten Gaza? It's an ethnic cleansing method, because if there's no infrastructure, there are no homes, there are no schools, there are no hospitals, there are no mosques or churches, there are no grocery stores, there's no water plants, no sewage plants. Well, people can't live there anymore. They have to leave, and that's what has happened. All those people in southern Lebanon have now shifted and are displaced, living in the streets in other parts of the country. I know even like my barber, he's Lebanese. I asked him how was his family. He said, they had to flee. They had to leave their home. And I said, where did they go? He said, well, fortunately, because he works here, he has some income. He was able to rent a house for them in like a tourist area in Lebanon, in the mountains. A lot of these homes are usually, reserved for, summer vacations or people that come from overseas. And they're paying a lot of money because it's a tourist area. And now, not only that, because there's a huge shortage in homes, prices are really high. But he said he knows that he's one of the fortunate ones, and it's basically like 3 families living in, a small home. So that's what's happening there. But they don't want to report it because Israel has a plan to take over and occupy these lands and not give it back and expand their borders. It's part of something called the Greater Israel Project. And when you mention it, people say, oh, that's just, those are conspiracy theories. No, they're carrying it out.
Have you been to Lebanon? Have you ever?
No, unfortunately, I've never been there. But I've been wanting to go for the past couple of since the pandemic, and every time it's something else. First it was a pandemic, then it's the wars, and so it's inshallah. Hopefully, it'll be safe enough one day that I can go visit. I know you have, so can you tell us about it?
Last time I went, it was for my cousin's wedding, and it was I think in February. And after the wedding, Ahmed, we were sitting at a cafe, like my aunts, my cousins, sitting at a cafe by the Mediterranean, wearing T-shirts. It was a sunny day, very pleasant, wasn't cold at all. So then we said, why don't we take a cab and go to the mountains, to an area, I'll just try to remember the name. And my sister and her son and daughter said, okay, let's do it. And my brother. So we took a taxi, went about through the mountain and roads from Lebanon, maybe 40 minutes max because they are, mountain roads, not too wide. And we started skiing. Not skiing, getting on what they call it, teleferic, the electric...
cable car.
Cable car.
That goes up the mountain, yeah.
Yeah, they call it teleferic. And we were, Ahmed, over white snow. And then after that, we went to have dinner, and still the sun there. So everything around us is snow, overlooking the Mediterranean, and it's sunny on the other side and beautiful. Very beautiful country, but very small. Now, what I want to tell you is my mother-in-law was Lebanese, and she is from the south. From an area called Sur that is being bombarded. It has a lot of Roman artifacts and stuff. Now, she is a Muslim Sunni. People think of the south that this is where Hezbollah is, and that everybody there is supportive of Hezbollah, and everybody there is from the Shia sect. But when I went with my husband to visit the area, almost every restaurant we went to was owned by a Christian. So in Lebanon and the Arab world, you cannot say, okay, we are bombing the south where the Shia are or where the supporters of Hamas are, because every neighborhood has a mosque and has a church, and in Beirut and other places has a synagogue, because there is a huge, small minority of Jews in Lebanon. So people maybe turn things when they talk about the Middle East and the Arab world in terms of black and white, Ahmed. But in Lebanon, you cannot have black and white. I remember we were at the airport for that wedding, and we were waiting for my aunt and mom to arrive from Jordan, because everyone was coming from a different country. I'm the only one who took a picture of a totally veiled woman, wearing black from top to bottom, standing next to a woman wearing mini jeep, mini skirt, whatever they call them, sleeveless, wearing high heels, not sure why she's standing there at the airport, but nobody was looking except me, because Lebanon is so mixed and beautiful and cosmopolitan, and you will have all kinds of religiosity in it. You can't bomb it to claim that you are getting rid of resistance. Very, very unique country, Ahmed. Plus, it has so many refugee camps for the Palestinians, and that is another issue that nobody talks about it, because the Palestinians in Lebanon are in the hundreds of thousands. So what is going to happen to them? And some of these refugee camps were on the road when my husband and I went to see his mom's hometown. You will find these refugee camps on the road, like on your way. So no one is talking about them, and they have witnessed before massacres. So really, Lebanon is a very volatile and very dangerous situation, but I don't think our media are covering it enough, Ahmed.
You're Palestinian, but your family was forced to leave. Is it common for Palestinian families and people from that area to be marrying across borders and things?
Yeah, like for instance,
you said like your mother-in-law is from Lebanon. I thought
yeah,
her husband is from Syria.
No, my husband's father is Palestinian. Okay, he was living in Palestine before 1948.
So your husband's father is also Palestinian.
Yeah, and he was living in Palestine, and there was somebody from Lebanon living in Palestine, a woman married to a Palestinian. Yeah, it was very common for people from the Levant, like Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, and Jordan, to intermarry, because there is so much commerce between them.
Were there borders between them?
Not borders the way there is a checkpoint and you just know that this is Lebanon, and you know that this is Palestine from the name of villages and the names of people. So my husband, father, they introduced him to Tharwat, who happens to be from Lebanon, from the south, who was visiting this lady, who is Lebanese and married to a Palestinian in Lebanon, in Palestine. So they got married. So before 1948, she's living with her husband. A couple of weeks or months or a year later, the war breaks out, and they are living in the north of Palestine, very close to the borders of Lebanon. So they said, they started, the Deir Yassin massacre happened, and there was this news that there were women who were raped and girls who were raped, that now you can go to Facebook and Twitter and all these things, Google them, and you will find all this information coming out of the mouth of the some of the Haganah and the old people who were doing these atrocities, talking about their victorious conquering of Palestine. And then she became a refugee with her husband, but because she's Lebanese and from a good family who could afford to host them, so she went with the family to Lebanon. They lived there, and the father, who is a mechanical engineer, couldn't find a job in Lebanon, so they ended up in Syria. And this is where my husband grew up. He grew up in Syria. So he was growing up in Syria as a Palestinian Lebanese, living as a refugee, but not in a refugee camp, because the father immediately found a job in the textile industry. And what is interesting, Ahmed, is that when my father-in-law was working in Palestine in a textile factory, the factory had several engineers who were Jewish. They had, I think, some British, because there was a very flourishing textile industry in Palestine, where they would produce very high quality threads and sell them to Europe. So they had a major kind of industry going on between Lebanon, Syria, Turkey, and Palestine. And when my father-in-law helped the Jewish engineers flee to the area where the Jews were concentrated, because, it was like a war going on. And he ended up living all his life in Syria, and unfortunately died young. My husband was very smart and ended up coming to the US to finish his medical school. But that's one family, Ahmed. With my
Very
father,
long story. You should write a book about it.
Yeah, with my father was about 16 or 17 when the forces moved into El-Lid, and there was a massacre called the Dahmash Mosque Massacre, which is my family name. People can Google it, DAH. MASH massacre. My father and his cousin survived it. They fled, unfortunately, for their lives to Jordan, stayed there for 3 weeks, and then my grandfather went to Syria. And Syria at that time, Ahmed opened the doors for the Palestinian refugees and said you can live without having to apply for a residency or anything. They just accepted everybody. Luckily, my grandfather had some money, so he was able to buy a house. And my father left Syria to Kuwait, worked as an English teacher for 1 year, saved enough money to get on a boat and come to Texas, where he did his mechanical engineering and electrical engineering in Texas, and immediately found a job in Kuwait. But again, unfortunately, died very young at the age of 47. I was 12 years old. Then we left to Lebanon. Civil war started in Lebanon. From Lebanon, we moved to Saudi Arabia. From Saudi Arabia to Egypt, where I finished my high school and my 4 years at the American University in Cairo, then worked for 4 years in Jordan for Jordan Television until I met my husband and married and came to the US 36 years ago. So this is my life story. But we are very lucky, Ahmed. We're not like the people who are trapped now in the refugee camps in Syria or in Lebanon or in Jordan. They have no papers. They have laissez-passer. They cannot apply for a visa and come to the US or go anywhere. So they are stuck inside these refugee camps. Unless you are a brilliant student, for instance, and you apply to Canada to finish medical school or something, then you can be granted a visa. But people live in the camps, marry in the camps, and die in the camps in order to create the state of Israel. Tragedy, really a tragedy. I think there is a movie, Ahmed, called 36. People can see it in theaters in America, and you can go and know what was the period in Palestine pre-1948, pre the creation of the State of Israel. What was going on? How was the British and the French helping some Jews from Europe to take over a country in the heart of the Arab world? So I advise people to go and see these things. That's my life story, Ahmed. And to our listeners, this is True Talk on WMNF 88.5 FM. And some listeners are sending me messages saying they are sorry about the avocado pit and what I should be doing about it. But Ahmed, we have more serious news to talk about. What is the latest?
The latest is that the price of oil, it is skyrocketing. This standoff of the blockade on the blockade, so that's happening in the Straits of Hormuz, where Iran is. And you remember there was, a couple of weeks ago, there was a ceasefire and there was supposed to be negotiations in Pakistan. They didn't come to an agreement. And since then, when they didn't come to an agreement, President Trump announced that the U.S. military will be doing a blockade. And the whole idea was Trump has been demanding that the Strait of Hormuz gets open, so people were confused. I thought you want it open. Why are you blockading the existing blockade? So now there are two blockades and nothing is moving and the price of oil is rising. Now it's reached over $120 a barrel, and they say that's the paper price. It's actually in the real world, I think they're saying it's more than $150 or $160 a barrel. So what is that going to do to the economy? And I'm not sure. And I think it's not sustainable because we live in such a globalized world, and trade is very dependent on oil and on many things, even in all sectors, they depend on the energy that's coming out of that area. So that could impact, it is impacting everything from everything we eat to transportation, to jobs, to healthcare. I hear even
agriculture,
MRI equipment.
MRI?
Cultural too, but even I heard this small thing that MRI equipment need helium gas, and almost all of it comes out of Qatar, and it's not getting there. So that could impact people getting MRIs, healthcare. And just even if the blockade is over, it's going to take a long time for things to get back. You remember how long it took for things to restart after COVID? Mm-hmm. That prices remained high for a long time and still are. Prices are still high.
Okay, I'm looking at.
But people here are talking about the need for a ballroom
in
Washington, D.C. after the shooting, the attempted shooting that happened at the Correspondents' Dinner, which a lot of people are just saying, it's really confusing. People don't know what to believe anymore. Was it staged? Was it not staged? Why is it as soon as the person was apprehended that the first thing that everybody from the Trump administration was calling for, that, this is the example or this is the justification and proof that Trump needs to build his ballroom. Because if there's a ballroom, you wouldn't have had that kind of situation. It was kind of bizarre, kind of lobbying all of a sudden that all these public officials are saying that they need a ballroom. I mean, the world is falling apart. We're on the brink of this international financial crisis, and they're saying that they need a ballroom.
Ahmed, actually, I just read that this person didn't fire a shot, and probably...
Yeah, I told that to many people the night of. I don't think he fired anything. I think all the gunshots were actually coming from the security personnel, and he didn't necessarily fire a shot. And they said they had like a shotgun and other things, but if you see the images when he was running, you don't really see any weapons on him. And if somebody had any weapons, they wouldn't be necessarily running so fast. So people are just so skeptical of everything now. And he's been now charged with attempted murder or attempted assassination of the president. He was nowhere near the president, Mm-hmm. He didn't get that far.
But we didn't know anything about the earlier investigation, did we? Or even
the assassination last year?
Yeah.
Yeah, in 2024, the person that did the assassination from the rooftop, they're refusing to investigate or disclose. They're just saying, it's just a lone wolf. Well, how did he get up there on top of that building? And how did he take that shot? And how is it that Trump's ear is still intact? It's a lot of...
He should see my fingers. Oh, my God.
Yeah, the avocado. The avocado, your hand is visibly... And there's going to probably be a scar for life or what?
Yeah.
Forever.
Of course.
Yeah, it's not going to have, and that's a knife and an avocado. What about a bullet coming from so far away? Come on.
But talking about about expensive stuff, what people don't think of is, Ahmed, like you said, one of the byproducts of oil, I think, is let me just see, nitrogen and something called
fertilizer.
Yeah, fertilizer. And for instance, there is 46% more farm bankruptcies in the U.S. this year, more than last year. I think 312, the number. From this American Farm Bureau Federation. So one of the reasons why we see the meat in particular, so expensive is because many of the fertilizers are coming from, not from the Gulf region, but it's a byproduct from the Gulf region. So, but for instance, countries like Egypt, they depend a lot in feeding the 110 million people on agriculture. So how a country like Egypt cannot afford rising high prices? My sister lives there, and she tells me every day the price is different. Every single day, their vegetables and fruits are more expensive and meat. So there are so many byproducts. And then there was yesterday a very interesting report done by, I think, a journalist. She's of Arab descent in Washington, and she was showing people that even in the U.S. the prices of meat are getting higher and higher, but not only because of the war, Ahmed, but also because of the tariffs and because of some fertilizers, I think, coming from Canada or something. So we are witnessing...
There's a report that 15,000 small farms and ranches were closed. 15,000 in 2025, and that trend is going to even be bigger this year.
And
that's
the other
15,000, and in the past 5 years, 141,000 small, medium ranchers, because there's all this consolidation of the farming in America, and it's just by corporations that want to control what we eat.
Also, I read something quite interesting. Going back to Iran. Is that I think the Atlantic or the Politico, one of them, they published an exclusive Vance doubts the Pentagon's depiction of the Iran war, and there has been really a heated discussion several times between Vice President Vance and Hegseth over the information that Hegseth feeds Trump when it comes to cost, when it comes to really the amount of weaponry left in case there is a confrontation with Taiwan or Vietnam or China. So that's interesting because, again, our media are not covering this rift that is happening and going on. And I wonder, maybe this is why we heard that Vance is going to to Pakistan to do the peace negotiations, and then it's Witikoff and what's his name, Jared Kushner. And I think one of the things I was reading from British media is that the Iranians were at the meetings trying to explain to Witikoff and Kushner the differences between the grades of uranium, like doing an 101 class to these two people because they have no clue. They are sitting there negotiating over something extremely sensitive, and they lack the scientific knowledge. I don't know if you have read that, but and the other thing I read is that the CIA is running a kind of I don't know, a testing of the waters, let's say, in the Arab world and in Iran to see what if Trump decides I won the war and just back out. I don't know if you have heard these things too.
Why would they test the water for what?
To see the reaction.
Oh,
if it's if
not literally test the waters, y'all.
No, test the waters and to see what could be the reaction. Like what would
I mean, some people have even said, if just lie to Trump and say he won so he could stop, so it's all about winning and not as much concern as for the consequences. And this is the real, issue here. There are talks that, his erratic behavior, his at some point there was some discussion that I've read online. I don't know how valid it is, that at one point, he was asking to drop a nuclear weapon on Iran, and some people in the military said, like they're not going to do that, or there's a process for it. And at some point, that because he was acting in an erratic behavior, one of maybe the chiefs of staff had asked him to leave the Situation Room. Not sure how valid these leaks are, but it's really concerning that when you have somebody that's at the helm, it's supposed to be the commander in chief, and people are questioning his mental stability. And Pete Hegseth was asked about that yesterday in the hearings in Congress, and instead of just saying, it was asked by a congresswoman, do you, believe that the president is mentally stable? And instead of saying, yes, I do, he's just saying, I'm not going to even entertain that question. Did you ask Joe Biden that same question? And he kept pivoting back to Joe Biden over and over because obviously Joe Biden's mental state was in decline. But again, Joe Biden was not leading some sort of war, and Joe Biden is not the president right now. And that's what they kept saying to him. You did not work for Joe Biden. And even let's say that the Congress failed to hold Joe Biden accountable. Does that mean that you get to have the same, excuse? No, it doesn't. It means answer the question, and he never really answered the question.
And why is he so angry? I think he has an anger issue. He gets very angry.
I don't know. I mean,
he has anger issues.
He's obviously combative all the time because, he's under a lot of people. A lot of people, even back then, said, he's not qualified for this position. So it seems like he's always trying to prove that he is, and he's always on the defensive. And maybe he himself knows that this is, he's in over his head. A lot of the people in these powerful positions in this administration don't have the experience. You can't just become Secretary of Defense because not everybody can do that job. There should be some prerequisites to it. And just because you served in the military and you're on Fox News does not make you qualified right away. In the same way that Kash Patel just being, put into the FBI, people are questioning that he lacks the skills or the experience to do that job, and people in the FBI don't show the respect for him because he lacks that experience. And it's a different issue. It's like nowadays, if you try to criticize these people, as we are here, right, or even discuss it on air here, you have to. For the first time, we're finding ourselves like questioning and trying to not say filter, but being cautious. Is whatever I'm gonna say going to rub these people the wrong way, and that they'll come and try to do will it lead to some sort of backlash? I mean, for years we've had this radio show, and we say whatever we want. Obviously, within FC, we're not the type to curse and stuff, and it's not allowed on our show or on the station anyway. But we criticize people in power. We criticize the President Obama. Criticize him so much. Bush, Dick Cheney, Paul Wolfowitz, former FBI directors. But nowadays, after everything we've seen and how this administration is so vindictive that they go after people. I mean, they just re-indicted James Comey, who was at one point one of the most powerful people in America. And a judge has already thrown out the first indictment. And now the same administration is indicting him again, the former head of the FBI. And it's like, he published a video saying, that he's innocent, he's going to fight this. And, he fought it before. But if they're going after these powerful people, some of the most powerful people in the country because they criticize the administration or they criticize Trump, what can they do to you and I? And we don't have the resources to do that. What can they do to WMNF? What can they do to people? They're looking now at trying to denaturalize people all over the country that disagree with them politically. So now it's basically they expect you just to stay quiet, not criticize, not say anything about Rubio or Hexas or Kash Patel or the president. And if you do, there's this new norm in Washington that they'll go after you. I mean, they're going after the most powerful people in the country. They went after Jerome Powell, the head of the Federal Reserve. And no matter what you think of the head of the Federal Reserve, that's a very powerful position. And attacking him, with his words, etc. And now, he's being replaced because his term finished. But instead of resigning, Jerome Patel is staying on.
Powell.
Jerome Powell. I'm sorry, not Patel. Okay, mix the names. So he's staying on, because the president doesn't have the power necessarily, and I think the Supreme Court or one of the courts has ruled that you can't remove, governors from the Federal Reserve. So he's going to stay on. How is Trump going to deal with that? But again, the fact that the Justice Department just goes after people like that just because Trump wants him to. And that's one of the reasons he, got rid of Pam Bondi. As loyal as Pam Bondi was to President Trump, she wasn't doing enough. And she basically went after everybody. But even that was not enough. So now, he's having Janine Pirro, or, that lady that's so hateful to Muslims.
She's Lebanese, by the way.
Yeah, she's originally like Maronite Lebanese, I think.
Yeah, she's Lebanese.
She's just like, she reminds me of Pam Geller, or not Pam Geller. She reminds me of
she
Bridget
looks like
Gabriel.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's same, but except with a New York loud accent. But you saw like even things like when they seized the oil tankers off the coast of Iran, people in the world are saying, well, you guys are acting like pirates. How are you any different than the Houthis or the, like people that are just stealing oil tankers?
I think,
or the Somalis, and they're like, then they say, we have a warrant to seize it. And where does the warrant come? It comes after the fact from Janine Pirro, that she issues a warrant, say, oh, we had a warrant to seize it. Well, a warrant after the fact. And they did the same thing with Venezuela. And just the other day, I think yesterday, or the Secretary of the Treasury announced that they seized something like $500 million of Iran's crypto. I thought crypto was decentralized. How are they getting the cryptocurrency of Iran? And people are saying this is stealing. This is not seizing. Seizing is just another word for stealing, for theft. How are you just able to just grab whatever you want? Is this the new norm in the world? I don't know.
I have a caller. Ahmed has been waiting. I'm not sure what he wants to comment on. Gonzo?
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Doing fine. I just wanted to talk a little bit about Trump. I try to understand him. Number one, he's a bully. He picks on everybody. He picks on women. He picks on gays. He picks on Muslims. And number two, he's a white racist. I can say that out loud. I have a right to an opinion. And I say that coming from, I'm a minority. And all my life, I've faced people like him. And I would not hate women. I would not hate gay people. I would not hate Muslims like he wants me to. And I've been in fights over that all my life. So people need to understand the Iranians are never going to agree to anything with him because that's the way he is. You can never agree to a bully. You have to stand up to him as long as it takes. And each one of us, yes, we might be afraid of retribution, but we have to have our own moral character, and we live with ourselves each day. So that's all you can do.
Thank you, Gonzo. Appreciate the comment. Thank you so much. Yes, Ahmed, there is nothing we can do about it except persevere and keep telling the truth and keep supporting WMNF. But it's scary, like you said.
Don't you agree? Like, do you find yourself sometimes thinking twice what you're going to tweet? Or
of course, because
you still say it, but are you a little worried?
Of course, I am. But and friends like who read what I write, which mainly in Arabic, say, "Aren't you afraid of what they could say?" I said, "But I'm translating what the New York Times is saying or what the BBC or whatever." But Ahmed. Something interesting because now I don't know why the State Department account in Arabic follows me. I have no idea, okay? But they follow me. And I sometimes retweet what they say in Arabic to show their double standard. But anyways, one of the things that they said that if you are going to apply for a visa to come to the U.S., you are supposed to hand in your password to every single social media account like Facebook, Instagram, and stuff I don't know, and X. And they will go through 5 years. I'm sure they have some computer, something that they can do that and see what you have tweeted in the past 5 years. And one of the sentences, if they find it, is if you say that Israel, I don't know exactly the wording of it, but it being Israel is committing crimes.
Oh, that will get you disqualified.
Disqualified for a visa. To apply to visit America, not Israel.
Wow.
You're most likely going to visit Israel faster than the U.S. But this is unbelievable. The things that you can read and the things that are going. So, of course. And I mean, some people decided not to come and visit the U.S. because they don't want to give their own personal passwords to the immigration officer. To look into your accounts. What if you have personal data or secrets from your spouse or something? This is very invasive. This is so un-American that I have to say. And, one of the sad things is that really democracy is very fragile and we have to work very hard to preserve it and to keep it, trying to keep freedom of speech. For instance, I don't necessarily like this guy, Kemal. I don't even follow him. I never heard a monologue of his. But when the First Lady and the President of the U.S. is asking for your firing or removal, that's a big issue for Americans to pay attention to. This is freedom of speech. This is guaranteed by the Constitution. What's next?
You're right.
What if somebody is listening to our show and they don't like it, or other shows that deal with, like the gentleman before our show, I forgot his name, Ahmed, that does the economic report. I'm fascinated by him, and he's extremely, by the way, against what is happening in Gaza, and supportive of the Palestinians. What if we don't like his economic summary and his criticism of what is happening to the workforce in the U.S.? The president can easily ask for your firing or intimidate you. I mean, it's the president of the country. I'm not sure. Our life here is, some people envy people who live in the West, like from third world countries, but it's really a constant daily struggle for people who work in such sensitive things like you and I do. You deal more actually with more issues related to Muslims and American Muslims and Arabs more than I do, but it's a tough existence, I would say. I came to America to make money, and I never worked in a place and environment where I could make a lot of money, but it's okay. Anyways, yeah, go ahead. I don't know if you, because this is an urgent news, Ahmed. It's about the flotilla. What
about it?
Okay. Freedom flotillas started, I think, in 2010 to break the siege on Gaza, because Gaza has been going through a siege since 2010. That's 26 years. Anyways, so people from all over the world, but journalists and some famous people would go on a boat and try to reach Gaza, and they did before, and they were able to. In 2020, there was a raid. I'm trying to look now the information, Ahmed. There were a number of Americans, and they were intercepted and attacked and taken to prison in Israel and subjected to horrible treatment. And we interviewed one of the ladies. She's a lawyer who was on the flotilla, and they eventually released them. So now you have a number of boats, I think 18 of them, and they kind of travel from... where did they leave this time? I'm not sure. But so they travel not together in order to make it difficult for Israeli boats to intercept them. Obviously, they did last night, and I kept watching for a while, but stopped. So now I'm reading now. There is a call to release humanitarians, journalists. Some of them were Americans, Ahmed, and work for American news media, and they call it the global Sumud Flotilla. Oh, he's a contributor. His name is Alex Colston, and he is contributor to Zito. And there are 20 others who were in international waters 600 miles away from Gaza, and they were all abducted. And Zito is calling on the UN, the US, and anybody who is able to interfere to try and see where Alex Colston and other 20 that have been hijacked on international waters. Ahmed, we have less than a minute to go. Running out
the
of
time.
flies.
It always goes really fast.
Yes, this we have like what? Yeah. So we will follow the flotilla. By the way, there is another American. His name is Tariq. He's on the boat. I know his father. I sent him to see if he can be on the show. Still waiting for him. Still waiting for the doctor from Gaza. But that's what happens when you try and do a show with people who are under such circumstances. But Ahmed, I think we're gonna be wrapping up now. Nice to be in the studio, and I'm gonna play the scoop in a few seconds. Okay, Ahmed, see ya.
Okay, have a great weekend, everyone.
Yes, this is WMNF Tampa. Keep supporting WMNF, and the scoop is going to play next, inshallah.